Rabbi Isai, welcome to Yerushalmi Pesachim. We're holding a Mem Zayin of Adalef. Now, we brought in our Mishnah that bringing Kol Pesach from beyond the Tchum does not push away Shabbos. So, Habas Mechus Tchum, it doesn't push away Shabbos, but surely it's Shavuos. Why don't we allow it? Because of the rule, there's no such thing as rabbinical Shavuos in the Beis Hamikdash. This is support. Like in, there's an opinion that holds you get malchus on taking things beyond the tchum, al tchum Shabbos, tvat Torah, because it's not rabbinical, it's tvat Torah. And therefore bringing your carbon from beyond the tchum is forbidden min Torah, and therefore it's not permitted for the sake of the Beis Hamikdash. Now, there is, whether it's a tchumin is min Torah min Rabbanon, is machlokes Tanaim. In sight over there, Rabbi Kiva holds, also min Torah, the Chachamim argue, and then it could be that 2,000 amas is Darabanan and 24,000 amas is Min Torah, right? That's what it could be. That everyone agrees there is a certain level which is Min Torah, but whether they argue as to what that share is, 2,000 or 24,000. Anyway, let's move on. Now, we brought Rav Yonasan, the one who goes against the Issa Tchumen gets lashes. So we bring the discussion between him and Reb Chia Rabbah. Amar Reb Chia Rabbah, he said to Rav Yonasan, now, there's only averas of punishments of Shabbos with skila and koris. We never find an isur lav where you'd get lashes. So he says, but doesn't it say shavu ish tachtav ali ish from koma b'yom shvi? Do not leave your place on the seventh day. Don't leave the tchum. It's a separate lav. Don't do any work. It's different to the malach of skila and koris. One who's over on that gets lashes. Amalei, so he says, me kasiv loy. It doesn't say don't go loy. So he says, al kasiv. Maybe you shouldn't get lashes if it's got that expression. Amalei says, what do you mean? You don't get lashes with the word al? But kasiv we find with the Kol Pesach, don't eat it raw, right? And you get lashes, and it's the word al. So you see, the word al can mean lashes. And over there, me kasiv loy, it doesn't say don't eat it loy, it says al kasiv. So you can get lashes on a lav with a lashon of al. I mean, the truth is, the Gemara doesn't mention here that you do find lav in, maybe you get lashes, and that's lav de b'chaber, right? Getting your animal to work for you on Shabbos is an isur where there would be lashes. Although that's not on you, it's on you for your animal doing the work. But maybe we didn't want to bring discussions where it's your animal that's doing the work. Even though Rav Yonasan proves this taina, you get lashes on the Issa when it says Lashon Al. Zeh Omer Bishmas. So Rav Chia kept to his opinion that you don't get lashes on Tchumin. But Zeh Omer Bishmas. And Rav Yonasan also kept to his opinion that you would get lashes. According to him, you would get lashes. Okay. Now the Mishnah forbade cutting a yabeles, like cutting a wart of a Kol Pesach on Shabbos, which is a blemish. Now Chatichas Yabaltai. Now, cutting a wart on Pesach, even Bekli, is only rabbinical, it's only Shavuos. It's Malacha, you don't need the wart, you don't need it for its own purpose. So why does it now push away Shabbos? We've got a rule in Shavuos for Mikdash. So the Gemara answers, he never learned the wording, and his wording didn't include it. He said, that bringing it into the Mikdash, like carrying it from beyond the Tchum, they are also on Shabbos. That reference to cutting this wart, he didn't have it in his wording. He never forbade it. And according to him, it would indeed be permitted on Shabbos because of this reason. That there's only a Rabbanan, there's no purpose in it. So he actually didn't have it in his wording. Now, min begin do sava bekli. Now, maybe it's because he held that cutting this yabelas with a kli, even though you're using a vessel, it's only Yosim Rabbanon. Because it's Melach Chen Zvich Legufa. And that's why he left out the situation of cutting Yabeles from his Mishnah. Ha'in Lai Sava Bekli Shvus, had he not held that it's only a Shvus, if he held it's Melachim and Torah, right, and that you would be, let's say, Chayav from Melach Chen Zvich Legufa, if he held you be Chayav, he would have kept it in the Mishnah amongst the things that don't push away Shabbos. Now, Loi Kain Arabavohu, did Rabbi not say, Ma Peligin, where are they arguing? Now, they're talking here now about the separate argument, cutting nails on Shabbos, right? Now, if a person cuts his own nails or someone else cutting the nails. Now, there was an argument there about B'shanot Lanhu. A person cut his own nails. Where Rebbe Lezer said you can be very careful to cut them very properly, and therefore it's considered you're doing a malacha. It's like a normal way of doing it. Aval not lon acher, if someone else is cutting it, then mu'usin hein. Look, that person is not really interested in your nails. They're a bit despicable to him. He won't cut it straight. And therefore, Rebbe Lezer held that you're possible in such a case where someone else is cutting the nails. Now, v'hadein zevach ke'acheru. Now, cutting this yabeles from this animal is like someone else cutting the nails. So even if it's done with a kli, and it would be considered a proper malacha, Rabbi Yosef el Chanina should not have included it in our Mishnah, because cutting this yabeles from an animal is only a shavus because you're really sick of these, like someone who is sick of cutting nails of someone else. You follow that? Just like you don't really want to cut someone else's nails and you're sick of it. So cutting a wart of an animal, you're sick of it. And therefore, it should be drabanan anyway. Rabbi Yosef, he says, wait a minute, this is a korban here. You're not sick of a korban, right? It says, Zivchi, this is, Hashem says, this is my korban. No one's going to be sick of that. You'll make sure to cut it as well as a nice way as you can. Therefore, cutting it with a kli, had it not been for the fact that it's malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, then it would have been forbidden min haTorah. And that's why it would have been included amongst the malachas which would not push away Shabbos. But he didn't have that wording in there. That's why he didn't have that wording. Okay. Now the Gemara says the reason to bring the animal, let's say, beyond the tchum, because these actions are forbidden from the Torah. Whereas things which are rabbinical, the Yisr can be pushed away for the Korban Pesach. Now we do find rabbinical things which are not pushed away. Let's see. Ramana said, Hazaya. Actually, Ivor, can I just ask you, can you put the other lights on, please? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Ramana. Hazaya. Now, sprinkling the red heifer to purify a person who's come into contact with the dead. We're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. It's only a Shabbos. It's like metaken. It's like you're correcting the person by sprinkling it on Shabbos. Ve'ilu. Now, the things mentioned in the Mishnah are also on Shabbos, Shavuos, in certain ways, but Hazaya Daichin, nevertheless, because of the Issur, now if a person can't have this sprinkling done on him, then he's not going to be Tahar. If he's not Tahar, he can't bring the Korban Pesach. So because the Issur sprinkling, we're going to push away his Korban Pesach. Imagine the 7th day is Shabbos, yeah? And then he wants, let's say the 14th of Erev Pesach is Shabbos. He wants to have his Korban Pesach tonight, and maybe they'll slaughter it on his behalf. But if he needs to be sprinkled, and he won't be able to come in, he'll be tired, he won't be able to come in. Basically, the sprinkling, we're not going to allow the sprinkling on that 7th day, which falls on Shabbos. The sermon who's Tamei Pesach is Pesach, which Chals Bios B'Shabbos. Erev Pesach is Erev Pesach is Shabbos. Now, he's going to stay Tamei, and he won't be able to bring his Korban Pesach, because we won't sprinkle on him on the Shabbos, right?
He'll be Tamei after dark, won't he?
Basically he'll be Tamei. We're not going to sprinkle on him. Yeah, normally, if we did sprinkle on him, he would be Tamei till after dark. Yeah. But we're not even going to sprinkle on him. So he's going to be a proper Tamei. Now, so we don't push away this sprinkling. Sprinkling is only a Shavuos. It's only a rabbinical thing. Yeah. And we don't push it away. We say, no, he mustn't do it. Whereas other Isurei Shavuos, we don't push away the Korban Pesach. As we said, various things also in Torah, but various Shavuos we do. So here's a rabbinical thing which we do push it. We push away Korban Pesach from this. We don't allow him to be fit to have a Korban Pesach. We don't sprinkle. We don't. Well, the 7th day is Shabbos, and we can't sprinkle on this day because it's Shabbos, and we're not going to do it. Even though it's a rabbinical thing, we're not going to do it. And he ends up he can't have Korban Pesach. Ella, what's the difference? Shazeh. The reason why we can't bring Korban Pesach in certain cases, bezeva, it's one with the animal. Bezeh, whereas the other case, or the waters of the red heifer, is bezavech, is on the person. Now, not everyone agrees to this difference between the animal and the person. So some Drabonas will do, and one Drabona like sprinkling we won't do. Why? Milsa Reb Zaira, from Reb Zaira, he agrees that his pity is he's Zabach. No, there's no difference between the two. Because Tani Reb Yehuda bar Pasi, the bar Kapara, he said the following in the name of bar Kapara, Kumi Reb Zira, Simeini Hech Kiva Reb Eliezer Reb Yeshua Es Tshuva. Now, why did he accept this answer? Oh, you see, there's sprinkling you can't do. I mean, yeah, we find sprinkling, which is Shavuos, it doesn't push away Shabbos for the sake of Korban Pesach. And therefore, other Yisrael Shavuos should not push away. But the cases are not the same. Because there, the one of Reb Eliezer, these are things mentioned in our Mishnah, which we can't do. The reason that stops you bringing the Korban Pesach is the Zebach, it's with the animal. Whereas there, but this one of sprinkling, the reason which you can't bring the Korban Pesach is Zebach, is on the person. So they're not the same. Amalei Reb Zira said, Bar Kapara Tama, Bar Kapara was a bit amazed at this, but Reb Eliezer Lo Tama, he wasn't concerned about it. He held that's a valid reason. And you don't have to, he said that is, basically he held, he wasn't worried about this. Basically, Reb Zira makes no distinction whether the reason is Zebach or Zeveach. That's basically what he's saying. Reb Eliezer wasn't worried about it, but Reb Zira maybe was worried about it. So that's a question, do you make a difference between the animal and the person or not? Okay, now we brought Reb Eliezer. That even Yisrei Shavuos, which could have been done before Shabbos, they're permitted. Reb Eliezer allowed you to do all things, which even though could have been done before Shabbos. Now we're going to bring another discussion on this. Reb Eliezer. Now, Ma'am Shchita, look, slaughtering the animal, which is a proper malacha, shum malacha. 14th is Shabbos. We slaughter the Korban Pesach on Shabbos. So that's Doichas to Shabbos, right? Then Elu, these rabbinical things, Shem B'Shum Shavuos, like bringing it beyond the tzchut, whatever, Lo Yitchis to Shabbos, should they not push away Shabbos? Of course they should. Amalei B'Shua says, wait a minute. Yom Tov Yechech, what do you find in Yom Tov? Shehite by Mishum Malacha, because that you're allowed to do, let's say for eating, you can do something from Mishum Malacha, you can slaughter an animal in Yom Tov, you can cook. And there's no problem in that. But Asabai, and yet they forbade you to do something which is Mishum Shavuos, a rabbinical din, bringing food beyond the Tchum, going beyond the Tchum to eat in your friend's house. You could have done it before Yom Tov. So let's say the same with Korban Pesach. The Shechita is Malacha, that pushes away Shabbos, but all the Machshirin, all the things that go with it, should not push away Shabbos, even rabbinical things, because you could have done them before Shabbos. Why should you do these Rabbanons? You could have done them before Shabbos. Amalei Reb Eliezer says, wait a minute, Mazeh Yishua, what are you on about? Ma Raya, what can you bring a proof that it's only Rishus, Le Mitzvah? How can you compare things which you have a choice to the things which you have to do? They said they don't allow Shavuos on Yom Tov for the sake of Yom Tov, which you could have done it before Yom Tov. That's because it's a choice thing. Whereas bringing in Korban Pesach is an obligation. So maybe this way they didn't worry about their things and they push away Yisrael Shabbos for bringing Korban Pesach, even though things could have been done before. You have to bring the Korban Pesach. So yes, things could have been done before, but maybe they waived that and they allowed you to do it. Now, we're calling eating on Yom Tov Rishus. You can choose to eat on Yom Tov. Now, why is that? Ma Rishus. How are you calling the joy of eating food on Yom Tov? You're saying it's up to you. Because like Tinin, have we not learned to Mechaleles HaKodshim? If you disgrace Kodshim and Vazez Modes, it will profane the festivals. And cancel out the effect of circumcision of Avraham Avinu. Saying things in the Torah, and he says things wrong. It's a terrible thing. So one of the things is Mevazeh Moedos, disgracing the festivals. So surely you should have rejoice and you should have good food. How can you tell me it's up to you? No, it's a mitzvah. What do we mean when we say it's Rishos? Ma Rishos. Ratza Bishel, Ratza Lo Bishel. You know what? You want to cook? You cook. You don't want to cook? You don't have to cook. Right? You don't have to cook. You don't want to cook? Don't cook. You can have food which doesn't need cooking. Or you cook all your food before Yom Tov. So that Simchas Yom Tov is more lenient than bringing Korban Pesach. This has to be done on the day and with Shechita, with Malachim on the Torah, and therefore we should allow you to do the rabbinical Isurim that go with it. Now, why did Reb Eliezer not push away with Yeshua's Kavachomer with a better answer? This is what he should have said. Before the Gemara, before he tells you the good answer that he could have said, it says Rabbi Yeshua could have said something against his kal v'chomer, another stronger pircha more than what he actually brought. Basically, he could have said like this: Harei chagigas, this is what Rabbi Shua could have said. Harei chagigas Yom Tov kashitas chatechiach. Look at chagiga of Yom Tov. Sheitiru ba mishum malacha. There they allow you to do malacha, but asu ba mishum shavus. They don't allow you to do the rabbinical isurim. So according to Rebbe Lezer, Korban Chagiga, you can bring it on Yom Tov, right? They allow it, Melachim and Torah, but they forbade these rabbinical prohibitions. Even though it's a mitzvah, they still forbade the rabbinical things. So your view, you have a proof against the kal v'chomer that you brought. You said, oh, if Melachim and Torah is permitted for mitzvah, then definitely rabbinical things. Well, Chagiga, Torah is permitted, but rabbinical is not. Now, we bring the answer that Rebbe Lezer could have answered to push away the question he was asked. But now, what could Rebbe Lezer have said as an answer? You know what he could have said? He could have said, lie, don't start comparing the din of Pesach to the din of Chagiga. Because in Mamata Chagigas Yom Tov, if you're going to tell me Chagiga on Yom Tov, where you can't do Rabbanans, that's because ein chayabin aleh kares. You know, if you don't bring it, you don't get kares for that. There's only, okay, you've not done a mitzvah, you didn't bring chagiga, there's no kares for not bringing it. And therefore they said, right, okay, we don't want you to do the rabbanans with it. As opposed to Korban Pesach, Taima b'Pesach, as opposed to Pesach, shechayabin alav kares. There's kares if you don't bring it. And because there's kares, it's so severe, and therefore they allow you to do rabbinical things with it. Isurei Shavuos, that's why I blessed that they would allow you to do rabbinical because kares is so severe. Now, after the Gemara explained what Rebbe Lezer could have said, it says V'tivine kemas nisin. Now, also in our Mishnah, Rebbe Lezer should have answered to be sure the same thing. And he says, lie, don't compare the din of Pesach to Simchas Yom Tov. Because in Mamata Yom Tov, it's all very well the joy of Yom Tov that they don't allow you to do Rabbanons. That's because she'ein chayavin alav kares. There's no kares if you don't do it. Tema b'Pesach, as opposed to Pesach, chayavin alav kares. If you don't bring Korban Pesach, it's much more severe. Why did Rebbe Lezer not answer that? In our Mishnah, this answer, which seems better than the actual answer he gave. Because this is enough to answer also against the raya that Rabbi Shua brought from Chagiga. Basically, he could have said, Korban Pesach is kares, and therefore all Rabbanans go with it. Yeah, that's what he could have answered. So the Gemara says, you know why he didn't say it? He said, you know, they had many answers for these questions. They didn't always say all of them. All the idea like Rav Nasa said, a person who has two reasons, and he answers just one of them. So here as well, Rebbe Lezer could have answered, yes, the Korban Pesach is more severe, the Chayv Kares, but he chose just one answer. The Pesach is Chayv, is an obligation, and Yom Tov is Rishus. Yeah, Yom Tov you can do what you want. You want to cook, you cook. You don't want to cook, you don't cook. That's why it's not so severe. As opposed to Korban Pesach, which is an obligation. So that's the answer we gave. He had more answers, but he gave one of the answers. Okay, now, another Tana is questioning Rebbe Lezer. Hey Shiv, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, now, he says like this, sprinkling for a Tamei Mace, where the seventh day is on Shabbos, Erev Pesach, yeah? Sprinkling Erev Pesach, which falls on Shabbos. And this person's Tamei, and if we don't sprinkle on him, he can't bring Korban Pesach, right? Teichiach will prove to you to push away the kal v'chomer. He says, Shehi mitzvah, the sprinkling is a mitzvah, it allows him to become pure, to keep the mitzvah of bringing Korban Pesach. Dehi mishum shavus, and it's only also rabbinically, it's like masakein, it's only a rabbinical thing, and yet, ve'ena doches Shabbos. It doesn't push away Shabbos for bringing Korban Pesach. The person remains tamei, he'll have to bring a Korban Pesach a month later, right? Now, although Shchitas Pesach is Melachim min Torah, and that pushes away Shabbos, but this sprinkling does not push away Shabbos. Af ata al titama, so do not be amazed. Al elo, these are the stories we brought in the Mishnah, like bringing it beyond the tchum, cutting the wart. Sha'af bi shehem mitzvah, although they're needed for the bringing the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, the only rabbinical problems, they should not push away Shabbos. Even though Melachim and Torah is pushed away, but rabbinical things, don't be surprised that they're not pushed away. Rabbi Lezer wanted to say they are pushed away, but he's saying no, they shouldn't be pushed away, just like sprinkling is not pushed away. Rabbi Lezer said back to him, you know something, even on the sprinkling, I want to argue with you. I want to allow it. Because slaughtering pushes away Shabbos, pushes away Shabbos. Hazaya, sprinkling, Shabbos, should it not push away Shabbos for bringing Korban Pesach? Yeah, I think it should be allowed. Rabbi Kiva said, maybe the Kol Haloshon should be the other way around. My Mazaya sprinkling is rabbinical and doesn't push away any of the Shabbos of Shechita, which is more severe. Shabbos should not push away Shabbos for the sake of Korban Pesach. Why is he saying the other way around? Why do you say Kol Haloshon that sprinkling is permitted? I think it's forbidden, and therefore Kol Haloshon change it around. Let's say even Shechita is forbidden. Shechita is forbidden? You dare say that? The Torah clearly says you can do a shechita on Shabbos, because the Torah says Bein Habayim, on the 14th you bring it b'mayadai in its time, regardless Bein B'chol Bein B'Shabbos, whatever day of the week it is. The Korban Pesach is slaughtered on the 14th. So how can you tell me, oh, maybe let's swap it round and say you can't shech? How can you say that? Rabbi Kiva said back to Rabbi Lezer, you want to say Shechita pushes away Shabbos b'mayadai. Haveli mayed le'elu. Give me a fixed time for these things of bringing beyond the tchum, cutting the wart. K'mayed b'shechita, like the Torah gave his man for slaughtering Korban Pesach. You bring me a mayed for that, and I'll agree to what you say. The fact that Shechita pushes away Shabbos is because the Torah fixed its time on Erev Pesach. And therefore, Erev Pesach on Shabbos, you can't do it before Shabbos. But these other actions don't have a fixed time. You can do them before Shabbos. So they shouldn't push away Shabbos. That's what Rabbi Kiva said. Klal on Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva said a rule. Shabbos, if you could do it before, in the Derech Shabbos, don't do it on Shabbos. Shechita, Shechita you couldn't do before, then Derech Shabbos, then you can do that on Shabbos. Yeah. Listen to this, Rabbi Isa. Listen to this. 13 years. Asa Rabbi Kiva nechnas eitzel. Sorry, Asa Rabbi Kiva nechnas eitzel Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Kiva was listening to the shiurim of Rabbi Lezer for 13 years. Rabbi Lezer didn't know how great Rabbi Kiva was. V'zu, and this discussion, was his first discussion that Rabbi Kiva plucked up the courage to discuss things with Rabbi Lezer after 13 years. Rabbi Shua said to Rabbi Lezer, now these are the people that you despise them. Say now, go and fight with them. This is the Talmud, you ridiculed him. Now you could deal with his claims that he wants to help me and support me. Let's see if you can push away his views. Now, we've learned elsewhere. Now, someone who is far away from the Beis HaMikdash. Yeah, by the way, it says here, Rabbi Kiva was an Amaretz. He was a shepherd of the Ben Kabbalah Savua. And then, until 40, then the daughter, his wife, recognized his greatness. And she agreed to marry him, providing he'll go to the Beis HaMikdash. He learned in front of Rabbi Lezer and Yeshua for 12 years. It sounds like it wasn't clear Masoros if it was 12 years or 13 years. Maybe from the 13th year, but not all of it. It says after 13 years, he started teaching Torah as well. The Babling Suvas, it says after this story that he said his greatness in Torah, then he had 12,000 Talmidim who came to learn Torah from him. Because of the argument that was between Rabbi Kiva with other teachers, the Rabbanan changed their thing. They raised him in their level. Okay, so what we got here now? Taman Tanina, we've learned elsewhere. a person who's far away from the Beis Mikdash can't bring in Korban Pesach, and is not obligated to bring Korban Pesach. The question is, how far must he be? So, Ezei Derech HaChoika, which is the distance that exempts a person from bringing Korban Pesach, and he'll have to bring a second one. Someone who was Min Moedius V'Lachutz. Moedius and onwards, whether this is Moedian as well, this was outside Yerushalmi. I think it was around 15 kilometers from memory. Uchmeidasa lekol ruach, and also that equal distance, all sides of Yerushalmi, would exempt him from bringing Korban Pesach because he was far away. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. This is the view of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Lezer said, "Me'eskupas ha'azara v'lachutz," outside the threshold of the Azara, outside the area of the Azara. At the time when they're slaughtering the Korban Pesach, is already considered far away. You hear that? It's just outside the Azara. What do they translate it there? How do they translate it? Meskupa, well, outside the threshold.
Threshold of the temple culture.
Threshold of the thing. So he's just outside the Azara is good enough. So one opinion says he's got to be 15 kilometers away, and the other one said, no, he's just outside the Azara. Yeah. So what's the discussion now? On Rabbi Yochanan. La'am Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer said outside the Azara, you're considered far away. Yeah. In what respect? Ela lepatre min hakoros. You don't get kores for that. The Torah says, if you don't willingly bring Korban Pesach with kores, but if you slaughter the Korban Pesach, yeah, basically this person, if someone else shechts for him, he fulfills his duty. It's not that he's exempt. He's outside the Azara, but someone can shecht for him, and maybe later on he'll eat it tonight, maybe, right? Someone can shecht for him. It's not that he's exempt. No. He doesn't get kores if he doesn't have it when he's outside. Rabbi Lazar said, Masisa Amraken. You know, the Mishnah also says this. Because we learned in the Mishnah, Heishav Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva said, Hazaya Techiach. But the sprinkling proves there's a mitzvah which doesn't push away Shabbos. Shehi mitzvah. It's a mitzvah, it's also on Shabbos because of Shavuos. And it doesn't push away Shabbos. Mitzvah lahazos. Now, is it really a mitzvah for someone who's tamei mace to be sprinkled on? A person who's tamei, he doesn't want to be sprinkled, he can stay like that. Well, Tifta, we're talking about a case where he's a tamei mace, where the seventh day, as I've said, is on the 14th of Nisan. Yes? It's just before Korban Pesach. Shechal Yom Shvi Shelo Elias Baba Asar Shechal Elias B'Shabbos. Now, She'ilu Chol Haya, if it was a weekday, Haya Mazalav, of course we would sprinkle on him. But then afterwards he would come, Shechal Elias Pesach starts his Korban Pesach through a Shliach. And he'll come in, but he'll bury him. He can eat his Korban Pesach that night, because then he's tahor. But since the Kivan Shehi Shabbos ve'ena Mazalav, but it's Shabbos now, and if we don't sprinkle on him, Nimsa misakev min ha-mitzvahs. He's refusing, he's pushing away these mitzvahs connected with the Korban Pesach. Because of the sprinkling, we can't sprinkle on him, he can't bring Korban Pesach. And that's what Rabbi Kiva said. Sprinkling is a mitzvah because it can cause a person, it's done there to enable a person to bring Korban Pesach. And yet we still forbid it because of Shavuos. And with this, Rabbi Lezer argued, and he said, no, we should allow the sprinkling for the sake of a mitzvah. Now, the question is where this discussion now as to where a person is exempt. Is he outside, or is he far away, or is he just outside the Azara? Now, if he's beyond the Azara at the time of Shchitas Pesach, and if that's considered being far away, and we shecht for him the Korban Pesach, yeah, and if he's not fulfilled his duty at all, remember, what did the other opinion say? He said, look, he doesn't get kores for being outside, but they could shecht for him. So he's saying, if you're going to tell me that when you're outside the Azara, you are completely exempt, then why bother sprinkling on a tamei mace? Now, tamei mace, on the 14th, he can't come in now. He can only come in when Yom Tov comes in, he's outside. If he's exempt, then the sprinkling, what's the point of the sprinkling? He's exempt. It must be. Surely, even after the sprinkling, he's a Tvul Yom, he can't come into the Azara till nightfall. So throughout the time of the Shechita, he was far away. He couldn't come in here because he was Tameh. He was outside, Derech HaChoika. It might mean just outside the Azara, or it might mean far away. Now, if he's exempt, then if he's exempt, then what are we doing here? It must be the whole time of the Shechita he was derech hachaika. Now we can't slaughter. If you're telling me he's exempt, we can't slaughter a Korban Pesach for him. It must be. Rebbe Lezer agrees. If you're beyond the Azorah, you're not completely pushed away from a Korban Pesach. We can shecht for you. There's only we said there's no kores, but we can shecht for you, and he can come later on. You're not really far away, just outside the Azorah, and therefore you can come and eat it later after nightfall, right? And we can shecht for you now, as the way Rav Yochanan explained it. Now another Mora pushes away this proof. Rav Oshia, he said, I don't agree. It could be you're outside the Azorah, you're completely potted from bringing Korban Pesach, and even if they slaughter for you, you don't fulfill your duty. Now, how do you know then, where is the sprinkling a mitzvah? Why is the sprinkling a mitzvah if you're completely exempt? Tifta, I'll explain the case of Shechad Yom HaShvi Shalai Lies B'Shloisha Asa Shechad Lies B'Shabbos. The 13th was a Shabbos, not the 14th. His day 7 was the 13th of Nisan. She'ilu Chal Haya, if it was a weekday, Haya Mazal Alav, you would sprinkle on him. That evening, he's tahor. Lemacha, the next day is the 14th. Uba, he comes to the Azorah, we shecht his carbon for him. And he can come in, and eat it in the evening. But since the 13th is in Shabbos, we're not allowed to sprinkle on him. He is delaying the mitzvahs of bringing Korban Pesach. Right? He's basically getting out of it if we can't sprinkle. So in this situation, remember, we can't no sprinkling on him on day 8. Right? We need maybe day 3 and day 7, right? The next day Erev Pesach, already day 8. So in this situation, Rabbi Akiva said the sprinkling's a mitzvah, because then the sprinkling will enable him to bring Korban Pesach. And even so, the Chachamim forbade it for Shavuos. And on this, Rabbi Lezer said we should allow him the sprinkling for Korban Pesach. But in a case where the 14th was Shabbos, then the sprinkling would not help at all, according to Rabbi Lezer, because even after the sprinkling, he could not go in the Azorah, and he was derech rechaika, and therefore Rabbi Lezer would agree that we won't bother sprinkling on him at all. But then the Gemara says, Ashkach Tani Kaden Kanmaya. So there is a brisa which teaches like this, the first explanation. So there's a brisa that says clearly, like Rabbi Akiva, who brought his raya from Tamei Meis, where the 7th day is on the 14th, and then it comes back the raya of Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Yehuda bar Pazi said, well, what does it mean being a long way away? Tifta, Commander Omar, we could say the brisa holds that according to Rabbi Lezer, long way away is Maskupas Yerushalayim B'lachotz. It's outside the walls of Yerushalayim. Right? Now this person, Tvul Yom, he can come in Yerushalayim. He just can't go in the Azorah. So don't prove to me that he will be far away. No, he can be in Yerushalayim. That's not far away. So how can you bring a riot to Rav Yochanan from this brisa? Because Meshimin Davar Mechutz Yerushalayim or Davar Yerushalayim, you can't ask something which is beyond Yerushalayim, something in Yerushalayim. But Rabbi Lezer said, we allow the sprinkling on Tamei Meis, on Erev Pesach, which fell on Shabbos. Now you can't ask, oh, this person will be a Tvul Yom, he'll stay far away, he can't bring his Korban Pesach. No, Tvul Yom can be in Yerushalayim. The patur of being far away is if he's outside Yerushalayim. So he's not going to get a patur of being far away because he's inside the walls and he's allowed to be inside the walls. So it could be that according to Rabbi Lezer, anyone who's potted from Kores because he's far away, maybe we can't bring a Korban Pesach for him at all. And not like Rabbi Yochanan. Because only someone who's in Yerushalayim is not considered far away, even as far as the patur from Kores. Now we said in our Mishnah, after Rabbi Lezer learnt his Kavachomer, Rabbi Akiva said, or maybe the other way around. Now, basically, he's going completely against Rabbi Lezer. So he said, would you dare tell your teacher, or maybe you got it the wrong way round? Would you say that to your teacher? Because that's what he's saying here. So the Gemara answers, Rabbi Lezer is telling Rabbi Akiva halacha, she'ein hazaya daicha es Shabbos. Right, Rabbi Lezer is teaching Rabbi Akiva, at least in the past, the ein hazaya, that the sprinkling on a tamei, we don't push away Shabbos, but kafa by b'shas hadin, And now the whole discussion of Pesach, Rebbe Lezer denied this. He said the other way around. So it seems he'd said the opposite in the past. Lefun came. That's why. He said maybe the other way around. Maybe springing does not push away Shabbos. So to remind Rebbe Lezer in his memory, to remind him that he himself had said this in the past. Now the Gemara brings a brisa, which talks about a discussion between Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Kiva about machshirin of shchitas Pesach. Tony Rebbe Lezer Omer. Kashem shechita doicha Shabbos. Just like shchita pushes away Shabbos, kach machshirei shchita, things that go with it, the enabling things, doicha is Shabbos, they also push away Shabbos. Rebbe Kiva said, like, no, don't start comparing machshirin, because in mamata b'shchita, it's all very well shchita. You couldn't have done it before. It has to be done the 14th. And therefore, doichas to Shabbos. What about all these other extras which you could have done before? Therefore, ain't doichas Shabbos. They shouldn't push away Shabbos. Now, we've got a problem with you from the communal emurim, the fats of the communal kabbanos. You could have put them on Mizbeach Motzi Shabbos, right? They're the night after you bring the korban, and yet you could have done it Motzi Shabbos, and they push away Shabbos. Shabbos. You can burn them on Shabbos itself, even though you could have left it. What difference is it these extra preparations you do before the shechita has taken place? Mali machshir shechita and achal shechita, all the things that are done afterwards. Why should there be a difference between the two? That these should push away Shabbos and these won't. What's the difference before the shechita or after the shechita? Rebbe Kiva says, look, after the shechita is done, these extras push away for Shabbos, Shabbos. Because look, the slaughtering pushed away Shabbos. Once you pushed away for the slaughtering, the other things connected with it, you can push it away. As opposed to Yidcha Machshir Shechita Lifnei Shechita, should these extras push it Shabbos before you've actually done the Shechita? You're not yet broken Shabbos. You want to break Shabbos for these extras when you've not actually done the proper Malacha yet. Another pshat. When the Machshirin done before Shechita shouldn't push away Shabbos. She'im Yimatzeh. If after you do the Machshirin, Yimatzeh Shazevach Pasul, you'll find that actually, you know what, you did all these preparations with prohibitions, you did all this, and before the Shechita you realize, oh, the animal's pasul, it's got a blemish on it. You're not going to slaughter it. You ended up breaking Shabbos for these extras below Shechita without the Shechita taking place. But the whole heta of pushing away was for the sake of Shechita. And now you can't do the Shechita. Right? Whereas Machshirin after Shechita, you know everything's done right, and then you do these extras. Now, the Gemara brings the order of the questions of Rebbe Kiva, and the first question is connected with the machlokes between Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Kiva as far as bris milah on Shabbos. Right? We had that in Pesach Shabbos. Now Rebbe Lezer held, just like bris milah pushes away Shabbos, so all the machshirin, all these other preparations, right? Heating the water, etc., yeah? Sharpening the knife, Rebbe Lezer held all these things push away Shabbos. Rebbe Kiva said no. The machshirin which you couldn't have done before, they break Shabbos, but not the machshirin that you could have done before. Now, Gabei Tinoi Ma'izlach, what are you going to say about the children that have a bris on Shabbos? Now, an animal might become treif. A child's not going to become possible, right? You do a bris on the child needs a bris. They're not going to become possible. Why don't you allow to do on Shabbos machshirin which you could have done before Shabbos? The child's not going to become possible. Why can't I do these other things? So he says there is a worry. Look, the child might become ill. You've broken Shabbos with machshirin, with these extra things, and the child became ill. You'll have to push the milah for another day. And you've ended up pushing away Shabbos below milah without doing a bris milah. And that's why Rebbe Kiva did not allow you to do on Shabbos machshir milah, which you could have done before Shabbos. Now, Hativun, they asked, now what about Ari Mizbeach? Imagine the Mizbeach got smashed or dented. Shenafal b'Shabbos, it fell down on Shabbos. We can't bring karbonos on it. Hare'ena roili barais me'esmol. Now you couldn't have built it yesterday because it only got dented today. It was only dented today. Why should it not be permitted to build it on Shabbos? Just like machshirei carbon, which you could have done before Shabbos, right? So things which you could have done, you couldn't do before, you can do it on Shabbos. So if the Mizbeach falls down, why can't you build the Mizbeach on Shabbos? Now, so the Gemara says, you know why? Why you can't build a Mizbeach, and you're right, you couldn't have done it before. But general Mizbeachs, you could have built up yesterday. Brand new one. You want to build a brand new one yesterday? You could have done that. So he says it's true. You couldn't have built the Mizbeach yesterday before Shabbos came in. But you could have done general building. Generally, general stuff you can do. The Torah never gave it time. So Binyan Mizbeach is like Machshirin, which you could have done before Shabbos, because you could build Mizbeachs before Shabbos. He says, he said, wait a minute. Come Pesach, which has a wart. Now wait a minute, I couldn't have cut it on Friday before Shabbos because it wasn't in existence. So why can't I cut it now? I couldn't have cut it before. Right? It wasn't there. And yet Rabbi Akiva says I can't cut it on Shabbos. Right? It's included in those things which don't push away Shabbos. And even a Yaberes, which only came around today, I couldn't have cut it yesterday. So he says, you're right, you couldn't have cut it yesterday. But the general idea of cutting warts you could have done yesterday. Other warts you could have cut yesterday. They don't have a fixed time when you cut them, right? So the idea of cutting warts, you could have done that yesterday. He said, wait a minute. The person who's tameh and his day 7 for sprinkling is Shabbos, 14th of Nisan. There's no way you could sprinkle yesterday. Yesterday was day 6. There's no way you could have done it yesterday. So why does Rabbi Akiva forbid it today? He says, well, general sprinklings could have been done yesterday. General sprinklings could have been done on the Friday, in a case where day 7 was before the 14th. Therefore, it's like machshirin, which you could have done before Shabbos. Okay, that's the end of that piece. You could have said, well, bris milas could have been done the day before. How does it help? A child who has bris milah is the 8th day on Shabbos. Oh, we break Shabbos. Well, you couldn't have done it before. Yeah, but other bris milas you could have done before. The Torah allowed you to do bris milah, despite the fact that I couldn't have done it before. Yeah, but you could have done others before. Why don't we say to milah, Shalom Yisrael should push away Shabbos? It seems bris milah, the Torah allowed the bris when it's done on day 8 on Shabbos, and the Chachamim say by Yom HaShmini, don't start asking me about other children. They're 8 days on another day. This child, the Torah clearly allowed bris on day 8. Sprinkling, the Torah didn't mention sprinkling on Shabbos at all. It allowed you to bring Kol Pesach on Shabbos. In a situation, this guy, his day 7 for his impurity, and he needs sprinkling in order to be involved with the carbon. With this we say, well, the sprinkling itself is not fixed for the 14th of Nisan. So when the Torah allowed the bringing Kol Pesach, it didn't allow an extra sprinkling as well on someone who happens to be tameh. And therefore this person who was not fitting to receive the sprinkling beforehand, we will not allow the sprinkling on Shabbos. Rashi also says, the heter to break Shabbos for Kol Pesach is on things that belong to the carbon. The heter is b'moyadai. That's the Kol Pesach. Bring me a moed. Like, if you want to allow other things, the Torah should say moed, like Kol Pesach. Right? Cutting a wart does not have a word moed associated. You could have done it before. And a sprinkling on day 7, although you couldn't have done it before, but there's no moed to allow it. And then he says the Issur of sprinkling on Shabbos is only a shrus, and there's no thing about whether the Torah allowed it for Kol Pesach or not. It's rabbinical. But since the Torah allowed malachos d'oraisa with things you couldn't done from Erev Shabbos, therefore if this sprinkling was considered machshin, which you couldn't do without it on Erev Shabbos, the Chachamim wouldn't have forbade it. But we treat the sprinkling as machshir, which you could have done on Erev Shabbos, and they do not. The Torah did not allow it, because the type of sprinkling could have been done before. You hear that? I won't start the new piece today. The type of sprinkling could have been done before. Some say the whole discussion of the Mei Chatas on Shabbos was not extra questions against Rabbi Akiva, it's a support for the earlier answer about building the Mizbeach. You can't build the Mizbeach on Shabbos, even if it fell down on Shabbos, because we don't look at every situation Legufa. It depends. This Maisa, was this fitting to be done before Shabbos? And we say, look, someone has a Yeberes on Shabbos. You're going to tell me you can cut it on Shabbos because you couldn't have cut it before, but the Mishnah forbade you to cut it. The is is there, even though it's come about now. You have to say what depends on min Yeberes. Well, the types of warts could have been cut yesterday, and therefore it doesn't push away Shabbos. And someone who's Tamei Mace for day 7 is Shabbos. You can tell me you can sprinkle? No, you can't. The reason is what it depends on. This Maisa could have been done yesterday. And sprinkling could have been done yesterday. Therefore, for the same way, we won't allow you to build the Mizbeach. Even if it falls on Shabbos itself, you can't build it on Shabbos. Because general building could have been done yesterday. It doesn't need to be done today. Okay? Stop here, Rabbi Say.